Mac Flecknoe is a satirical poem written by John Dryden in 1682, in which he mocks the incompetence of Thomas Shadwell, a contemporary playwright and poet who was often compared unfavorably to Dryden himself. The poem is written in heroic couplets and is divided into four parts. The first part of the poem sets the scene for the mock-heroic satire that follows. Dryden describes the city of London as a place where poets compete for fame and recognition, and notes that Shadwell has risen to prominence despite his lack of talent. He then introduces Mac Flecknoe, the king of nonsense and the subject of the poem. In the second part of the poem, Dryden describes the coronation of Mac Flecknoe, who is presented as a figurehead of the literary world. He is crowned by the goddess of dullness and surrounded by a host of incompetent writers and poets. Dryden emphasizes the absurdity of this scene by describing the ridiculous clothing and behavior of the poets. The third part of the poem is the heart of the satire, in which Dryden launches a scathing attack on Shadwell's literary abilities. He accuses Shadwell of stealing ideas and language from other writers and suggests that he is incapable of producing anything original or of value. Dryden uses a series of elaborate metaphors and similes to drive home his point, portraying Shadwell as a monstrous creature and a pathetic failure. Dryden reflects on the state of the literary world and offers a warning to other aspiring writers. The pursuit of fame and recognition leads to absurdity and mediocrity. Also, true greatness can only be achieved through hard work and genuine talent. Overall, Mac Flecknoe is a masterpiece of satirical writing that skewers the literary world of 17th-century London and exposes the flaws and shortcomings of one of its most prominent figures. Now let's look at the poem in detail. John Dryden's Mac Flecknoe is a satirical poem that ridicules the writing style and literary ambitions of Thomas Shadwell, a contemporary of Dryden's who was known for his bad poetry. The poem begins with a general statement about the nature of things. Everything in the world is subject to decay and will eventually come to an end. Dryden then notes that even monarchs, who are often seen as powerful and immortal, must eventually obey the call of fate and die. Dryden introduces the subject of the poem, Mac Flecknoe, who is compared to Augustus, the first Roman emperor who ruled at a young age. Like Augustus, Mac Flecknoe has been ruling for a long time, both in prose and verse. He is universally recognized as the absolute ruler of nonsense, a type of literature characterized by absurdity and lack of meaning. Dryden uses the term bathos to describe this type of writing, which he considers inferior to true poetry. Dryden describes Mac Flecknoe as the Prince of Pindarus, a reference to the ancient Greek poet Pindar, who wrote odes to celebrate athletic victories. He notes that Mac Flecknoe is the son of Dryden himself, who was considered the greatest poet of his time after Shakespeare. Dryden suggests that Mac Flecknoe was born to rule the literary world, not limited to one specific form or genre. He notes that Mac Flecknoe's writing is designed to shake up and challenge conventional ideas and beliefs, but he lacks intelligence, bravery, and support from others. Dryden compares him to a skilled politician. Mac Flecknoe is loud and obedient in many roles. Audacious in the council and chamber, opposing anything that is good or valuable. Mac Flecknoe has been pressured to publish a collection of his work, which he derisively calls a damned paper. Mac Flecknoe is flattered by the attention and praise on his writing, even though it lacks substance and is truly unworthy of such accolades. Dryden concludes the poem by identifying Mac Flecknoe as the person who was able to achieve fame only through the influence of his father, who is similarly ridiculed as a mediocre poet. The image of ascending to fame through a staircase further emphasizes the lack of merit in Mac Flecknoe's rise to prominence. The writing style and literary devices used in Mac Flecknoe are key to its satirical impact and effectiveness. The use of heroic couplets, a form of poetry that Dryden helped to popularize during the Restoration era, is notable. Dryden uses heroic couplets to mock and to satirize. Another literary device used in the poem is irony. Dryden uses irony to highlight the absurdity of Mac Flecknoe's literary ambitions and to suggest that his success is undeserved. For example, Dryden notes that Mac Flecknoe is the Prince of Pindarus, a title that suggests greatness and achievement, but then immediately undermines this image by describing Mac Flecknoe as the ruler of nonsense. Satire is also used in Mac Flecknoe. Dryden satirized the literary culture of his time by ridiculing bad poetry and the cultural forces that allow it to flourish. He mocks Mac Flecknoe's flattery and the idea that bad writing can be celebrated and rewarded. Dryden also uses allusions to classical mythology and literature, as well as to contemporary literary figures and events. He compares Mac Flecknoe to Augustus, the first Roman emperor, and references the ancient Greek poet Pindar. By doing so, he connects his critique of bad poetry to broader historical and cultural contexts. Dryden uses vivid and sometimes grotesque imagery to highlight the absurdity of Mac Flecknoe's literary ambitions. He compares his writing to bubbles, by the breath of vanity blown, a vivid and memorable image that emphasizes the emptiness and lack of substance in Mac Flecknoe's work. So that was it about the poem summary and the analysis. Hope you found it useful. Thank you.